Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. We're taking a look at the week ahead as we like to do on Saturdays. Thanks for joining us all last week, and some pretty amazing stuff going on here. So thanks for tuning in. Give me feedback and let's keep this going and growing. We're seeing a weather warning. I don't usually talk about the weather in the broadcast here, but they're talking about maybe the most extreme that we've seen in decades, and it's going all the way from New Mexico all the way up to Canada. We're talking about some places crazy, like 30 below, but even 50 below, huge storms, lots of snow. So be careful on that. And apologies to all the people who have been saying that it's all about global warming and things are getting warmer all the time and we're all going to explode here on planet Earth in a great ball of heat and flame. Looks like there's a little bit of a backtrack on that one right now. The other thing to remember when you're talking about replacing everything with from oil and gas type of vehicles, that electric vehicles, though they have a place and they have a time, absolutely very undependable when it comes to these massively cold temperatures, which can still swing and hit us at any time. So keep that in mind and stay safe. Well, talking about staying safe, amazing story here that Russia, Ukraine, and USA gathering for meetings over the weekend. This terrible situation in Russia and Ukraine has been going on for way too long, as we all know. And they're meeting in Dubai. This is the first time, maybe in a long time, that the three parties, that'd be Russia, Ukraine, USA, meeting. So let's see what comes of those meetings. Better talking than not talking at all. And talking about talking or talking about TikToking, those of you who were afraid that you were going to lose your TikTok account and that you were maybe not going to see anything more from TikTok, just as you did in the background right there on my screen, it's good to keep in mind that a deal has just been made. The U.S. has actually come to an agreement now, apparently, and Oracle, who's one of the key firms that looks after, kind of oversees part of the TikTok situation in the USA. There's been an agreement, Oracle stepping in to do a lot of the management, but in honesty, there's a lot of companies that are involved now. ByteDance, however, one of the originators and founders out of China on TikTok, and this has always been the concern, that TikTok is still going to be able to control all kinds of situations and have technology alive and well in the States. This deal is supposed to mitigate against that, but ByteDance is still the owner of the technology, so keep that in mind. The genius here, as far as not shutting TikTok down, that means that in terms of just for this year alone, advertising in the US going to hit about 17 billion just advertising revenues for TikTok in the US, so a huge boost to the US economy there, but still some involvement with China. It's going to be, I believe, a metaphor of things to come. You're just not going to be able to 100% escape China influence. So this is how the government in the US and the marketplace is deciding they're going to have some control over TikTok. We'll see what works out there. Well, talking about China and the US, the U.S. just announced, you're going to hear more talk about this in the week ahead, they are withdrawing from the World Health Organization, the WHO. A lot of people losing their minds over that. And keep in mind, and I pointed this out about 5 years ago, I pointed out how China deliberately, through back channels and through some pretty fancy maneuvering, got to control the chair, become the chairman of the health committee at the WHO, at the UN, which really is controlling and was set and gave them a lot of ability to control things. China didn't. It was right after that, of course, you had the outbreak at Wuhan, you had the whole situation relative to COVID and where the original infection came from. A lot of criticism that the WHO and the health committee at the UN did not do everything they should have done to deal with that problem, and maybe the fact that China was controlling things at the time. And so all of that to say, and excuse that noise in the background, I'm not sure what it is, but we're going to keep on here, but all of that to say Listen, this is not a disaster for healthcare. In this day and age, with modern technology and with the ability to exchange health information instantly to billions of people, you don't need an overbearing, heavy bureaucratic committee that's controlled by China or other countries that are not democracies. It's going to be fine, folks. What we need to have some oversight in terms of the many studies that are out there on any given topic. What happened is what we saw happen through the COVID times is people were even arrested. Top health professionals and researchers lost their jobs, lost huge contracts because they did not totally buy into the pharmaceutical story relative to COVID and vaccines. Yes, there's still a case to be made for vaccines, but in terms of the scientific studies, so much of it being controlled by one committee is not a good thing. This should open up the availability to even more scientific research and health research and make for a healthier world. You don't need to be wasting, as the US was, hundreds and hundreds, in fact, over years, billions of dollars to support a bureaucracy that was doing very little to help health. Well, in Gaza, as we continue to see the advancement of this notion of a board of peace and involving a number of nations, if you can get past being angry about Trump, and many people really intellectually still stumble at the fact that, as I've said before, if Trump was to discover the cure from cancer, there would be people who would reject it just because his name is attached to it. We've got to grow up, and we've got to get beyond that and look at the issues on their face and look at whether there's some good going on or not. The idea of a board of peace, a number of countries looking at Gaza and trying to settle that situation, what could be wrong with that? As we're doing that, we see stories today out of Gaza, and you're going to see more of this. We're talking about what's coming up in the week ahead, of Gazans wanting out of Gaza, Palestinians wanting to get out. This is not a new thing. For years, especially when the war in Gaza following the October 7th rapes, kidnapping, and hostage-taking by Hamas, this was still a problem where people in Gaza were wanting out of there. And the Muslim nations which surround Gaza were refusing to take them. This is incredible. Here we have a situation where all the world, or a big part of the world, is furious with the United States right now because the United States will not take illegal immigrants. This is people who have been found guilty of serious crimes, murder, rape, child enslavement. These are the people that that the U.S. is trying to remove from their country right now, illegal lawbreakers, and everybody's furious that the U.S. won't just take everybody in. But nobody over the years has had a peep of complaint about all these Muslim nations which surround Gaza, and they refuse to let desperate immigrants into their own countries. Egypt and Jordan and Saudi and Syria refusing to let their own cousins come in. And that's just starting to change now. There's been some discussions, and Egypt, for one, has finally started to say, with U.S. pressure, okay, we'll take in some of these immigrants who are trying to flee a horrific situation. Good to see that happening. Let's see if it continues. Remember, Hamas has, in the past, and we're talking just in the last year or so, even killed people in Gaza who wanted to get into peaceful Muslim nations, not letting people immigrate. Here, the same people are criticizing the U.S. for wanting to move violent illegal immigrants out. So ongoing discussions there. Well, Canadian media for sure, and now worldwide media, have really been caught up on talking about crime, murder, and drug smuggling. The name Ryan Wedding has really swept, certainly not just Canada, but into the U.S. I was just talking with a young guy, a college student here in the U.S. Didn't know too much about Canada, but certainly knew about Ryan Wedding. And in case you've been on another planet over the last few months, Ryan Wedding is a notorious drug dealer. They've been after him. He's from Canada, been after him. He's been in hiding, and he's just been arrested. And a lot of speculation on Probably he might even have turned himself in because, of course, the cartels, they don't care who it is, anything for money. There was a reward of $15 million being offered for the arrest of Wedding. Somebody picked up that $15 million. There's some speculation it was one of the cartels, and that he, in fact, might have turned himself in just to keep himself from getting murdered by the very people he used to deal drugs for. There's even some suspicion that he might have done a deal, and that whatever he gets sentenced with, whatever time he has to do in jail, that there'll be a few $1 million waiting for him when he comes out as part of that 15 million. Who knows? A lot of speculation going on. But one thing that we really should take a look at, he's being, and this is so typical in much of Canadian media, they're softly and carefully almost lifting him up as some kind of a folk hero. Why? Because he was able to qualify for an Olympic event many years ago regarding snowboarding. And this is supposed to make him like some kind of folk hero. And every time he's talked about, and the young guy that I talked to even this morning here in the U.S., all he knew about Ryan Wedding was drugs and had lots of motorcycles, and he was an Olympic champion of some kind. Listen, he got Ryan Wedding because Canadians are so desperate to have somebody looking like they're succeeding. There's a lot of great success stories coming out of Canada in all fields. There always has been. But we're desperate. We grasp at any kind of straw to show that we've got some kind of viability. And so Canadian media, they almost make like he's an Olympic champion. He's not. In the event that Ryan Wedding was in the Olympics, he came 24th. Did you hear that? He came 24th. He didn't get the gold, he didn't get the silver, he didn't get the bronze, he wasn't in the top 10. He couldn't even crack the top 20. He came 24th. He's a loser. Ryan Wedding is a loser. He was a loser at the Olympics. He goes to the States and then he gets into Mexico. What does he do? He allegedly ordering many people to be murdered. And of course, transporting drugs that kills thousands and thousands of Americans and Canadians and leaves others debilitated for life. And now it looks like he may even be involved in his own arrest. There will be movies made about this guy. There will be series made. There will be women lining up to marry him, just like they line up to marry serial killers. It's a really weird thing, but keep this in mind. Ryan Wedding is a loser. Allegedly a murderer and a drug dealer, killing thousands of people. So quit with the romance. I know there'll be a movie, but quit holding him up because it just is a bit of a magnet, especially for young people who think it's cool to be a murderer and a killer. Well, there's a lot of discussion going on in the church community, broadly speaking, in Canada and the U.S. and even around the world, and it's related to the U.S., and their focus on moving violent criminal immigrants out of the U.S. Remember, we're not talking about misdemeanors here. The vast majority of cases, these are violent, murdering killers. We're not talking about all immigrants, but many fit this category. And of course, there's some in the U.S., even coming out of churches, who are violently trying to stop enforcement. They're saying, keep violent criminal murderers in our communities. That's kind of strange, but again, anything to oppose Trump. So the church discussion and debate on this is largely breaking down into two camps. There are those who are saying we should not be involved in illegal activities. Yes, protest is fine, but not breaking the law, not violence, and certainly not invading churches, which just recently happened. And then there's those within the so-called church community who are saying we have to become martyrs and be willing to stand up and stop the deportation of murderers, child sex offenders, and rapists and other violent criminals. Coming down on this, people like to say, well, what would Jesus do? What's the sign out of the Bible? What kind of approach would be? Well, let's remember the night that Jesus was arrested, and he was being arrested and charged with all kinds of things. Some I guess you could call it ICE officials, but people with swords, people with weapons came, and they started to arrest him. And one of Jesus' followers grabbed a sword and actually took a violent action against one of the police agents of the day there in Jerusalem. And Jesus stopped. This is one of his own guys. He stopped Peter and said, no. Matter of fact, Peter had used his sword and swung at this guard and actually cut his ear. And Jesus told him, put down that sword. And he went to the officer who'd been wounded, and he actually prayed for him, and he healed him. Look, Jesus is sending the example there. Yes, we should speak up for things we believe in. Yes, we should be willing to pay a price. But when they were talking about martyrs and martyring, being martyred in the New Testament, it wasn't for speaking up against the government. It was for the right to be able to say that you believed in Jesus. It was for the right to be able to say that Jesus was your Lord. It was for the right to be able to say that you wanted to follow Christ. That's what people were being killed for. So there's a difference between martyrdom, and there's a difference between that and actually getting trouble with the law because you're breaking the law. So what would Jesus do? Let's follow his example today and show a little love to somebody near you. Thanks for tuning in. See you on Monday.